We're here on a Friday night, and that's unusual. Winter storm warnings are up for, not here, not in the east. They're up in the Northern Rockies and in a narrow band through the north central plains. And the weather across the rest of the country is relatively uneventful. All of that and the long range on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. They've got salt, sand, and mulch, and anything else you need to make repairs around your house, and all the snow equipment, snow removal equipment, and salt that you could possibly imagine. So you can head over to Omni at 631-756-1125. Actually, that's the phone number. It's at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. That's where you can head to. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Joe Cioffi. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And many more.
Yes, that was in your best Marilyn Monroe. Right? Oh, good Lord. So
yes.
Please
allow me to share a screen, too. That's when you get a chance.
Of course.
Whatever.
So I spent my day... Oh, that was the wrong button. Hold on a second. I spent my day doing what I usually do, except that I did remember at about 2:30 this afternoon that I wanted to get my hair dyed. Done! So I rushed over to the beauty parlor, and I had my hair done and my goatee done, and it's all done. So I'm feeling good and looking good, I think.
Very good.
And a couple of early super chat hits. Thank you so much from David Carter and the chairman, Scott Briller, who's back on board tonight. Also, Raymond O'Hara. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you very much. And Timothy Veltman, thank you very much. I will enjoy a couple of cigars on you. Thank you for the super chat hits. And the chairman says, happy birthday, Joe. Might be a good day for a Briller, a birthday Briller Jeopardy, which I think you may have for later on. And David Carter also wishing me a happy birthday. You know, you can certainly attest to the fact that as you get older, your mind becomes like a sieve, and everything just sort of bleeds through it. You don't even remember half the stuff anymore. Well, I completely forgot, and I was watching. I was just on Twitter a few minutes ago, and Weatherman Franz, Mark Jr., posted a bunch of maps from a year ago. And apparently it was a year ago tonight, Joe, that they put up blizzard warnings for the New Jersey counties and winter storm warnings for everywhere else. And for a minute there, I was like, I have no recollection of this. But I remember the storm that we had last year. For some reason, I thought it was earlier in the month, but apparently it was right around this time of the month, right at the end of January. We actually, I'm going to bring some maps just as surface maps up to remind everybody about it. But I was took me a little while to remember. You remember it, Joe? That's the one where you had to go shovel and the temperature was 9.
Right, exactly. Didn't have exactly a lot of snow with that one up here. We had about 4 inches. I only had 4 inches, but there were places east of me out on Long Island that had considerably more than that. So I was just glad that I didn't have to shovel too much snow, although, as you mentioned, 9 degrees. Ouch. It was a cold, cold day. I do remember it well.
Yeah, 18 to 24 out east, and over a foot on the Jersey Shore. I think Atlantic City. Did Atlantic City get like 18 out of that too? I think they did. So for those of you who claim that it hasn't snowed in years, you're wrong. Let me just run through a few more super chat hits tonight, Joe. Jay Boston Emergency Responses says, happy birthday, Joe Cioffi, #Aquarius. Hope your birthday is full of great and positive energy. It was actually. Wish we had a snowstorm maybe next year, but we had one last year, and oftentimes that's what happens. So you have it in one year, and then a year later you have weather that's almost completely the opposite. It's not quite completely the opposite because we're not in the 50s today, but it sometimes it happens that way. And then we have Robert Russo. Thank you for the birthday wishes. And Janet Dunn, thank you for the New Jersey wishes. Please send some snow up to Northeast New Jersey. Hope you had an awesome day. I did. Anytime you get your hair cut, that's an awesome day, and that's what it felt like. So now okay. So I've just moved myself out of the screen so that you could put up this that you obviously found on some social media platform someplace.
Well, this is from my Facebook memories page. This is from 12 years ago, Joe. 12 years ago on this date. This is what we were looking at. I mean, apparently, back in the year 2011, we had more than our fair share of snow. And a church, the South End Baptist Church, I don't know exactly where that is, put on their message board.
Probably in South End, wherever that is.
Whoever's playing for snow, please stop. So as I put on my Facebook page, we were on the other side of the snow fence 12 years ago with this amazing amount of snow that we had received in that particular year. Wow.
That was 2011.
2011.
Right.
The winter of 2010, 2011. Was that the Snowmageddon year? Was that
that was 2013.
Uh-huh.
So no, 10 was the Boxing Day storm, I believe, on December of 2010, or was it 2009?
No, I think it was 2010.
2010. And then we had a bunch of nice storms during the month of January into early February before everything just kind of shut down. So winter weather-wise, because I think that was one of those where basically from once we got into the middle part of February, I think we were pretty much done for the rest of the winter. But it was a very bullish winter up until that point, certainly.
Is there any snowstorm that you particularly remember on your birthday that stands out among all the others?
There was one. God, what year was it? I don't exactly remember what year it was. Because during the 2000 to 2011 period, it hardly ever snowed on my birthday up until then, all those years. And then suddenly, when we hit the year 2000, it started to snow on my birthday quite a bit. I don't remember what year it was, but there was one where it snowed overnight from the 26th into the morning of the 27th, and it was on Long Island. It was basically an 8 to 12-inch snowfall, and it was already on top of another, like a foot plus that was on the ground. So it was nice waking up that morning so I kind of remember that. But God, I don't know. There was I'm sure there were other ones. That's the one that comes to mind. But I don't even remember what year it was. It was somewhere between 2000 and 2010.
Now in New York City, on this day in 2011, I just said that church sign was from 2011. According to Rob Friedlewitz, 6.7 inches of snow that fell before daybreak on this day.
Well, maybe that was the one. Maybe that was the one. The one.
Was a record for this date and brought the month's total snowfall to total snowfall, January of 2011, to 36 inches in Central Park, the most ever in January.
Right.
And just a year earlier, 36.9 inches of snow fell in February. And he also notes that in the past 33 days, beginning with the Christmas blizzard, an incredible 56 inches of snow fell. And for the first time, New York had 2 snowstorms of 19 inches or more in one winter. So that was 2011. However, this might be the one that you're thinking about, Joe. The great, and Friedewitz puts the word great in quote marks. This is in 2015. It was a Tuesday. The Great Blizzard wasn't to be, as just 4.3 inches of snow fell after midnight, bringing the storm's total to 9.8 inches at Central Park. As a result, the National Weather Service in New York City issued, and actually they're not in New York City, they're in Upton out in eastern Long Island. They actually issued an apology to New York City, which had shut down all schools and the transit system based on a forecast for 18 to 24 inches. Now,
when was this?
This was 2015.
Go ahead.
January 28th, 2015, 27th, 2015. However,
right. That was the half blizzard. That was the famous half blizzard.
However, just 30 miles east of the city, most towns on Long Island received that indeed prediction of 18 to 24 inches.
I got 24, and I think the city got a foot out of that at the park.
Well, they did, as he notes here again, on this day 4.3 inches. I'm not sure if the following day they picked up more or the previous day they had picked up additional, but anyway, the total for the storm for the city was 9.8 inches.
9.8.
9.8. A paltry 9.8 inches, which everybody was PO'd about in New York because, again, the forecast was for 18 to 24 inches. The city didn't get it, but east of the city, out across central and eastern Long Island, they got clobbered with that amount of snow. So either your big snowstorm on your birthday was 2011 or 2015.
No, the one I'm talking about was definitely the 2011, because the 2015 I worked at Pix on that Sunday night, and I drove home in it because I remember that very clearly because I walked out of the building, okay, and I could see the moon. All right, and there were a few flakes, and I drove down 2nd Avenue and I got into the Midtown Tunnel. I came out of the Midtown Tunnel, and it was like a steady, lightish type snow. By the time I got to the other side of Queens, it was whiteout, and I had whiteout conditions all the way home for 47 miles. All the way home on the Long Island Expressway. So that was the famous half blizzard because of the sharp cutoff. And the folks that went home in Jersey that night, basically drove through a couple of flurries. And by the time they got to the George Washington Bridge, it was, almost clear skies there. Christinapedia hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you, Christina. Happy birthday. Hope you had a wonderful day and hope you have a wonderful year full of joy. And by the way, Christinapedia, I think it was you. So there was some conversation on Facebook on my page, and somebody talking about the weather modification crap, and I saw you made a comment about it. She made a comment back asking you to prove how it's not weather modification, okay? And I would just say this, okay? It is not up to you to prove that it's not something. It's up to the other person to prove that it is something, okay?
Right.
That's how science works. So I was going to write that down to that other person, but I decided rather than start a conversation, open a big kettle of worms, and then having to deal with the probable name calling that I would get afterward, I sort of stayed out of it. But that was my takeaway. Okay, so you weather mod folks, all right, it's not up to us to prove that something isn't. It's up to you to prove that something is. So when you can do that, let me know. All right. Because you never do. That's the thing, Joe. They never do. It's always about the other person having to prove what is already known, rather than them proving what is already what is clearly unknown.
And when you prove it, they never come back.
Oh no!
They just said, "I'm going to slither quietly away into the darkness."
Well, because they're all basically narcissists. That they sit there with their arms folded like this, and their view is basically, I know something that you don't know, so you need to sit down at my feet and listen to what I have to say, because I'm going to give you a piece of a piece of knowledge that only I know and no one else knows. So it's just, I don't have time for that crap. I'm in a good mood.
Why do I suddenly think of that cartoon, the Porky Pig cartoon? I know something I won't tell. I won't tell.
No,
I won't tell.
All right, let's run through the weather. Not that there is a whole heck of a lot of it tonight, but let's do that. Shall we?
Surely.
Yes. Okay, so let's take a trip and head out to the Northern Rockies, which I'll switch the map up in a second. Just give me a moment. I forgot to set this up a little earlier, so I'm going to set it up now. And let me bring that map out there. Okay, so now I can bring the map up. So let's go to the watches and warnings map and take a look. Is that there's not a whole lot happening, with the exception being up in the Northern Rockies and in a sliver across northern Nebraska and southern South Dakota, and into parts of western Iowa there, where you have winter storm warnings up. And then you have a whole slew of winter storm warnings up in central and northwest Montana, northern Idaho, southeastern Idaho, and a good chunk of also the state of Wyoming, with winter weather advisories on either side. There's a few winter weather advisories up in the Sierra Nevadas, and everywhere else around some wind chill advisories too. Otherwise, everywhere else in the country, weather's pretty quiet. And I don't, looking at everything today, Joe, I don't really see, there's no major storms that we have to worry about for the next week.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it funny how the evening newscasts, however, the national evening newscasts all promote, they've got weather now. I mean, it's not just the news anymore. Now they look for reasons to say, and a terrible storm now embracing 55 million people. And it was the same tonight. And it could bring frigidly cold temperatures. And I said, yes, maybe in other parts of the country, but not here. Nothing is happening here. And that is the absolute truth.
Yep, there it is. And as far as snow amounts are concerned, there's already been some snow there, so this is on top of what's already fallen. So another looks like anywhere from half a foot to some places. Well, there's a 35 print there up in northwestern Colorado, somewhere in the mountains there. So in the yellows, it's all in the yellow areas, it's all 32 inches or more. And you see a few little streaks of yellow there into southeastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and down into northwestern Colorado. Slightly lower amounts as you go up to the northwest, but still many areas getting a foot plus there. And, well, they actually have winter weather advisories. I assume that, they've already had whatever 20 or 30 inches those advisories are called for, and they're just looking for an additional 3 to 6. So that is probably getting ready to play itself out. Meanwhile, as we look at the sad areas to the east, in the east, as far as snow goes, getting there in the other areas with winter storm warnings that are up in southern South Dakota and northern Nebraska, we're looking at roughly about 6 to 10 inches, 6 inches plus extending into Iowa where they have the warnings. Chicago is forecasting 4, Milwaukee forecasting 7 out of this. And this, by the way, takes us into Monday evening. So we see a few inches in northern Ohio, several inches in southwestern New York, and also in northwest PA. North central New York's got a 10 bullseye there, probably somewhere north of Pulaski. And also in the Adirondacks, some 3 to 6 inch amounts there, and about a coating to an inch or two going east until you get to central and northern Maine, where it's showing some 6-inch amounts. But everywhere else, Joe, really not showing much of anything. I'm not sure why they did this, by the way. Boston keeps talking about, they got this little patch here of a coating to an inch in and around Hartford, and I don't know. I kind of looked really hard today. And in fact, that must be for something tonight or into tomorrow, because I'm just kind of adjusting this map. I guess between now and tomorrow morning.
We had here where I was a flurry or two. before nightfall, before it got dark. So maybe that is something that's going to translate further to the north and east. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's see what's happening. I mean, we still have, there's still general troughing and energy moving across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. It really doesn't amount to too much. It's just a series of a series of weak weather fronts that are chugging along. And you also see the energy that it's up in the Northwest and up in the Northern Rockies, which is what they're getting right now. And we're also beginning to see some subtropical moisture riding across Mexico and in towards Texas, because there is going to be some rain setting up for the deep south for tomorrow, and for some more so for Sunday for me, but gradually developing during the day tomorrow in East Texas and then spreading eastward Saturday night and Sunday. That's going to eventually wind up off the Carolina coast as a low develops there, but that low is going east and out, and is not going to be a factor in the weather in the Mid-Atlantic, the northern Mid-Atlantic states, and on up into New England.
Okay. Well, you get your jollies out of that, but still, there's nothing that really suggests, at least for the next couple of. In fact, I didn't even look at the CPC today, so I haven't had a chance to look at them. Maybe I'll check them out in a few moments and put them up on the screen here.
Dude, I think because they have a blowtorch on there. I was told by somebody that they have a blowtorch in the 3 to 4 week forecast period.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll definitely take a look at them in a moment.
All right. Radars are fairly quiet, actually. There's a couple of little patches there in southeastern Connecticut and off of eastern Long Island. I can't imagine they're producing much of anything. And also in parts of northeastern New York, you can see a larger area of steadier snow back on the Canada side of Lake Huron, north of Lake Erie, and over Lake Erie into northern Ohio and into northwest PA and moving into southwestern New York. And here's the snow that is developing in the. Whoops! Why is it doing that? Mouse is doing weird things. But here's the snow that's up in the northern Rockies. One thing you got to remember when you look at the radars out here, that there's a lot of mountains, so a lot of what's there disappears. You can't see it all. So sometimes sometimes they have these winter storm warnings up there, and they're talking about all this snow, and then you look on the radar, and there's just like these patches here and there, and you got to remember the mountains shield a lot of what's going on. I know that from what happens down here, where half the time it's pouring rain here, and I look on the Atlanta radar, and there's nothing. The radar will show nothing. So anyhow, that's your radar for tonight. We can run really quick through the. So here's a surface map. This is from last year, Joe. This is from last year. This was on last Friday, which I think we were on for this. I think we did a Friday show. Because I remember we did the Friday show, and then we did a Saturday morning show.
Right. In fact, okay. I remember on the Saturday morning show, I actually did something off of my laptop, so I could step outside to show everybody, the snow that was coming on down at my house. So,
yes.
So yeah, I remember that well, and a far cry from that this particular year.
Right, and. When you look at this surface map, so there's the low center is out at 30 and 70. So you have just basically lower pressures all off the North Carolina coast. But what's really important here, well, there were a couple of things. First off, temperatures were mostly around the freezing mark from Boston down to about Washington, D.C. It wasn't particularly cold. But there was an Arctic boundary that you can see the cold front that is shown, and then it turns into a stationary front down into West Virginia. And then you look at the temperatures that were on the other side, they're mostly in the low 20s, teens, and then you go up further north into the northern lakes. Again, also here, mostly teens, but go up into Canada. In eastern Canada, temperatures were all below zero, and in some cases double-digit below zero, and this was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on that Friday. So as we go to the next couple of maps, so this was at 7 o'clock, and you could see the low moving northeastward, actually passed well off the North Carolina coast, but just began deepening rapidly, And then as the storm deepened rapidly, all this bitter cold air at 1 in the morning, Joe, I'm looking at some of these numbers of the temperatures in Canada, minus 15, minus 11, minus 17 just north of Vermont. I don't know what that town is up further northwest there. Minus 33, minus 38. I mean, this was really bitter cold air that was up there. And then by the low moved a tad northwest before it jumped up to the northeast. And at the point we were on that Saturday morning, we had a 970, less than a 976 low. It was a 975 low. Looks like at about 38 and a half ish and about 69 and a half ish. And now, of course, I'm looking here. I guess that's Poughkeepsie at 7 a.m. Joe was 9. Okay.
Yep.
And Albany was 5, and it was still in the 20s. The temperatures in New Jersey and Long Island had dropped down into the 20s at that point. And I'm looking at also down in Virginia and North Carolina, where temperatures were in Virginia were all down near 20. In the Carolina Mountains, it was in the low 20s. So I must have been down to also low 20s at that point here, because this is a perfect setup for me to get some snow and the funneling of all that cold air going all the way down the coast. And at 10 o'clock, the low was now at about 68 or so and 70 and beginning to pull away. And I mean, these bitter temperatures now were all in the low teens in New Jersey and Long Island by that point. And you, of course, were at, sitting in that single-digit range. And here's the map for today. Total opposite. Got a cold front coming in from the west. The air ahead of the front is almost the same as the air behind it. You have to really go up into North Dakota to find and northern Minnesota to find teens and a few single digits, and then you get to the below zero numbers once you get up into Canada and further up. And even here, Joe, it's cold, but it's not. These aren't crazy numbers. It's -2, -11. Granted, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. -11, -17, et cetera, et cetera. It's a cold. It's a fairly cold air mass, but it pales by comparison to what we had a year ago in eastern Canada that got drained down into the eastern part of the United States.
And Tim Veltman posts on the chat board, this again referencing last year at this time. He said, "This is a ridiculous storm. It was not too cold to snow last year, so it should not have been suppressed so far offshore. A 1027 high should not have muscled around a 975 low. Yet it happened. It did, and that's why places north and west got a modest amount of snow or little snow at all, and places that were closer to the coast, closer to the storm center, got hammered with a goodly amount more."
That's correct. So let's go to WPC. Here's your probability for at least 2. Way up in northern New England, northern New York, across the Great Lakes, that narrow strip there that goes back over into Montana. This is from now until Monday. And in the long range, the only thing I did notice in the long range was that they have for Tuesday into Wednesday. Let me just widen this out a little bit. So this is Tuesday into Wednesday. They have this narrow area of 10 to 30% from northeast Oklahoma, east-northeast, across southern Illinois, Indiana, northern Kentucky, most of West Virginia, and on up into Pennsylvania. Then Wednesday into Thursday. I love this map. I love this, Joe. There's a hole, okay? They've got 10 to 30 from Connecticut, from west central Connecticut eastward and northeastward to coastal Maine. Then they've got another 10 to 30% probability of at least a few inches from West Virginia down through Kentucky and northern Tennessee. And in between that, not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. I love when that happens. It shows you the conspiracy. This is a manufactured conspiracy, folks, okay? And then there's another patch there in North Texas. And then Thursday into Friday, they have a 10 to 30% chance, and this was really off, I think, last night's European, really, where they have a 10 to 30% chance through much of Virginia, the Delmarva Peninsula, and southern West Virginia and northern North Carolina, almost but not quite to me. But what this map, what these series of the series of these maps describe, is the fact that we're going to have this sort of weak overrunning pattern to the south with waves that are going to move along, and that's it. I mean, there's not a whole lot of amplitude here. There's not, there's not something coming down that's going to strengthen this. This is going to be, this is going to be a, a question of how suppressed to the south everything is or isn't. That's what it boils down to for me.
Yep. Yes.
Trish, well, I've got Trish Sparaccio, by the way, hitting super chat. Thank you, Trish, very much.
Thank you very much.
And,
thank you.
Okay, so you got their CPC thing?
I do. We can start off with the 6 to 10 day outlook. And if you're looking for at least cold weather, the 6 to 10 day is the only thing you can really hang your hat on here in the Northeast, because what it's showing for the period from Groundhog Day, February 2nd through the 6th. And by the way, Groundhog Day is coming up next Thursday, one of Joe Cioffi's favorite day. Maybe he'll do part of our show next Thursday, talking about how you can prepare a groundhog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have. Yeah. Oh, I definitely have a recipe.
Yeah. It's quite interesting.
And y'all can replace, if y'all can't find a groundhog, y'all can get a possum.
That's right. We are here in the zone of 70 to 80% probability of below normal. So apparently, later on next week into next weekend, we will be experiencing some cold temperatures, and in fact, 80 to 90% up across the state of Maine. That is, in fact, going to be the spot in the country with the greatest or highest probability or percent chance of below normal temperatures will be up in the granite state of Maine. Elsewhere, much of the country will be near or below normal. The only place that'll be above normal, it would appear, will be the Florida Peninsula, where if you go down into the Miami area, you've got about a 50 to 60% chance of above normal temperatures. Now, that having been said, checking out the precipitation forecast for the 6 to 10 day outlook, and you can see that along with the cold, we have dry weather that extends across from the desert Southwest through the central plain states, on up into the Great Lakes, and on up into much of the Northeast. The only place that will be above normal precipitation-wise, probability-wise, will be in the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast, including the Florida Peninsula, a small slice of the Northern Plains, and also into Pacific Northwest and Northern California. There, too, there will be above normal precipitation. Now, let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. Does it get any better or more winter-like? No, actually, whatever we get in terms of cold weather.
Ridging in the east.
Yep, there you go. The ridging in the east.
Where's the above normal? I mean, it's a kind of a flattish ridge because above normal doesn't go all the way up, but there's ridging in the east.
Flexing its muscles, and the cold that was over the Northeast is beginning to retreat now. And no longer is there like an 80 to 90% probability of cold. It has moved quickly on out. It's still below normal to a degree across New England, but it's not as cold as it was on the 6 to 10 day outlook. Precipitation-wise, well, your precipitation, quite a big change. No, remember, if you will, that much of the nation was in the below probability range for precip, and now all of a sudden there's an area of above normal, significant area over the Mississippi, Tennessee, and western Ohio River Valley into the Central Plains. Still wet over the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, and here in the east, only near normal. Now, somebody said they already had gotten a look at the 3 to 4 week outlook from CPC and said blowtorch weather. Well, there you go, Joe. Oh, dear me. Everywhere east of the Mississippi above normal. And in fact, 1, 2, 3, this area here is 60 to 70% probability of above normal, and down across Florida, an even greater probability, 70, 80%. So if you're down in Florida, this lower end of the Florida Peninsula, you're going to have a warm stretch, presumably during the mid to latter part of February. It's all below normal out here over the western states. And as far as precipitation, we've got, well, look at this. You go right along with that warm stretch of weather. You have above normal throughout much of the central and eastern states, below normal in Florida, below normal over the desert Southwest, still above normal out over the Pacific Northwest, equal chances most everywhere else. As far as the 8 to 14-day hazards outlook, is anybody here on this map? Okay, they have a moderate risk of cold weather, a moderate risk for cold weather over central and northern New England. That would be for February 4th. So that would be for a week from tomorrow, February 4th, moderate risk of cold. The frigidity will be there, and there's a slight chance over here in our neck of the woods, and that is for the 4th and the 5th of February. So next weekend could be a cold weekend. You'll stay indoors and watch the Pro Bowl next weekend. As far as anywhere else in the country, slight chance of hazardous or cold temperatures in the plain states, the northern plain states encompassing portions of Montana, the Dakotas, northernmost sections of Nebraska, and western strip of Minnesota. That's for temperatures. As far as precipitation, they have a broad area here of a slight risk of heavy precip over portions of Louisiana, Arkansas, portions of the Tennessee and Mississippi River Valley. I know what all of you are asking. What about snow? Well, if you want snow, the slight risk is still way out to the west from the 4th to the 6th of February. CPC is predicting or suggesting a slight risk of heavy snow for Idaho, for northeastern Nevada, northern Utah, and also for southwestern Wyoming. And also, as we always see, a strip, a narrow strip, encompassing, I believe, the Cascades, the Front Range Mountains, and down into the Sierra Nevada, where it always seems to snow these days. They're going to have quite a bit of snow when this season is over. And that's where the slight risk is. And as far as wind is concerned, our final look for any potential hazards only out in the far west, again, from the 4th to the 6th of February. So basically, Joe, the only thrill that we have will be here in the Northeast, the fact that it'll turn wintry cold, or more typically cold, when we get to the middle and latter part of next week into the weekend. But other than that, that's it.
That's it. All right, let's quickly go through the maps, and then you've got, I think you have Briller Jeopardy again today.
Yes, I do.
All right, so
it's dedicated to your birthday, Joe.
Thank you. So, how do I say this? I mean, the upper air pattern over the next 10 days or so is not terrible actually, but it's very broad, and you add to that the fact that the kind of winter that we've had that so far, that chances are you're going to have models that are going to, some of them have, showing potential small snow events in the next couple of weeks. Don't be surprised if none of them happen. Okay, I'm just going to put it to you that plainly and that succinctly, because I had a conversation with someone. Well, I think it was on my subscription platform. One of my regulars there pointed out about the importance of, I think it was there, pointed out the importance of being able to read the room. Okay, Joe, when you go to you ever go to a party? Have you ever gone to a party where you walk in and you just know that you're not going to have a good time?
Yeah.
Or not even a party, but something. You walk in and you could just feel it in the room. There's something going, in there where you just that's what reading the room essentially is. And in this particular case, read the room, folks. This winter has been terrible, and it's likely to stay terrible. Even though at times the models may show that there's an opening for something to happen, I would certainly bet against it. Now, we've got this sort of broad pattern. Now the problem is that it's so broad that you really don't have a solid shortwave trough to come along. It's just sort of a weak you sort of weak systems like this one here in the southwest in the middle of next week. And then the question becomes how much of that survives as it comes east, because the northern jet is going to try to push down, or the ridge may try to flex and push it up. And that's really the battle here. And in fact, when we go through the first week of February, the double cutoff that you see, one in eastern Canada, in eastern Canada, north of Vermont, and the other one near Newfoundland. Well, that pulls out. We do have a little bit more traffic coming in behind it, but you see the southern system there across the Gulf states is suppressed way to the south. And then after that goes by, you got to have a sort of a flat ridge and that starts and then builds as we make it toward the end of the forecast period. I mean, it's not terrible at the end of the forecast period because it's kind of a split flow, but I don't know. From what this does not lead me to be uh, any excited about anything. It just doesn't. And on the GFS today, for example, you have you have this weak weather front coming through, trying to come through tomorrow, just basically falls apart. All the cold air stays pinned back from the northwestern Great Lakes back up into the northern plains, which is where you've got your winter storm warnings. Then you have another front that's approaching with another low that runs up into western New York. Maybe we get a shower with that Sunday night as that goes by. There's a wave down in the south. There's the stuff coming out of Texas and moving across the deep south. There's nothing to lift it up the eastern seaboard, so that goes out to the east. So now you got this sort of remainder front on Tuesday, and here's a little wave that goes out underneath. Nothing. Here's a second wave that comes up, and of course there's something in the north now that's in play. This is for later Thursday. I mean, I don't know what you could possibly get out of this other than maybe some rain or showers, if this is even right. And then it just turns cold and dry behind it. A couple of highs come down, and then once the coldest air around the 4th or 5th. And what happens after that? That cold high pulls out, low develops. I don't know if this is even right. It wants to clip some snow there, sometime around day 10 or 11. Joe, it's been a long time since we've had a winter like this. I usually enjoy looking at models from run to run and really get into it. These last couple of weeks, but particularly this last week, it's been very difficult to muster up the energy with what some of these models are showing. I just don't have the I don't know. My heart's not in it when it's like this.
You think back to the days when we had some very active weather going on, and you say to yourself, "Oh boy, I could hardly wait." This, you stay up until like 2 o'clock in the morning to see the new run of the European,
Yeah.
or 1 o'clock. But this is like, who cares anymore?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's very hard. It's for winter weather lovers, obviously, and for forecasters who like to forecast winter weather like Joe and I do. It's disheartening because essentially we have to wait a whole another 10 months before we can do it again. But no
I
matter.
didn't know.
It ain't over yet, but it does feel like it sometimes.
I didn't know it until I looked this up, and I thought there was a lot more, because in December, the month of December, going back 154 years to the beginning, 1869 at Central Park, there have been in December 20 Decembers with no measurable snowfall, either a trace or none. And I'm figuring that, all right, there were 20 in December. There was probably something on the order of like 8 or 10 in January. No, there have only been not including this month, and we will be including this month very soon. But previous to this year, there have only been 3 other Januaries out of the 154-year lot that have had no measurable snowfall. 2008, only a trace then. 1933, a trace of snow. And in 1890, believe it or not, went through the entire month of January not seeing a single flake of snow. So this will be number 4. The average for a January like this is approximately once every 40 years. However, what we have never done before in the 154-year history, and I think somebody on the chat board mentioned it yesterday.
It was the chairman.
It was the chairman. Back-to-back months, December and January, with no measurable snowfall at Central Park. It has never happened, but it is soon going to happen because it's quite obvious that we're not going to get any measurable snowfall between now and the end of this month, early next week. So this is really a first. Now, Dr. Judith Cohen, yesterday, he wrote wise words, expect the worst, hope for the best. He had the GFS and Canadian ensemble side by side. The GFS ensemble yesterday showed very little to look forward to if you're a snow lover, but he mentions that the Canadian ensembles had significant snowfall, and he said the next few weeks is the best chance to end the I-95 snow drought, especially if you believe the Canadian model.
Now we're I'm going to get
groping for straws, grasping for straws.
Yeah, we're starting at grasping for straws. Yeah. Next, we're going to try to take a look at the Kazakhstan model to see what that one has.
And he said for today, 11 hours ago at least, he said every world-class athlete knows that perform at the highest levels, you need to stretch. And so it seems with the polar vortex. One polar vortex stretch ongoing, delivering cold and snow to North America, and models increasingly suggest yet another stretch polar vortex for the second week of February. Does he say anything else? No, he does not. So he keeps talking about stretched polar vortices, but unfortunately, it has been all but meaningless for winter and snow lovers here, at least in this part of the country. So keep on stretching.
Maybe it's not coupling. Maybe it's not coupling down to the lower atmosphere. I've mentioned that a few times. It's all fine and dandy to have all that happen, but if it doesn't filter its way down to the mid levels of the atmosphere and create the changes and moves the mechanisms around that need to be moved, it could split all at once. We saw that that happened a couple of years ago. Polar vortex split. Meant nothing, did absolutely nothing, never coupled to the bottom of the atmosphere. Speaking of the bottom of the atmosphere, we have at the bottom of the atmosphere on Long Island in Lindenhurst, Leon Propetsky, who hit Super Chat tonight. Thank you, Leon. Thank you for the birthday wishes. So let's do this Briller Jeopardy, and then I could take JJ out for his last WALK, and then I can go to bed.
This morning, like Renato woke up at 3:00 in the morning and said, "What is that noise?" And we have a heater in our like a comforter, so to speak, that warms the mattress. And apparently, my side of my particular side was emitting eat eat eat, and so I couldn't hear it, but she could, and she couldn't go back to sleep. So she walked over and unplugged my side of the heater, or my thing. And of course, naturally, since I woke up at 3:15, now I can't even. Now I'm not even being able to sleep anymore. It was like 4:30 before I got back to bed or fell back to sleep or whatever. So here we go with since Joe was born in 1958.
9.
What? 50? Oh, really?
9.
Well, he said 58. So all of these calculations are based upon 1958.
Oh.
That's right, because you're 64. So yes, you would be born in 1959.
Well, let's pretend that it was 58. Okay. And let's try the questions anyway.
how much could these have changed over a span of 1 year?
Oh, let's find out.
All right. Let's see. The cost of the following items. One house. How much would a house typically cost you in 1958 or 9?
Okay, I will say in 1958 or 9, I will say under $10,000. So I'll say not 8,000.
Remembering, of course, that the Ricardos, when they bought their house in Westport, it was what, 22,000?
22,000. So I'll say
Yeah.
8. I'll say 8,000.
Right, because don't forget the Ricardos were rich.
Yes, exactly.
To a degree. So you say how much? 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we see that. Thank you very much, Mark G. He hits super chat. Joe Z says $8,000. Craig Carberg says 15,000. Anthony Spiraccio 8,000. I'm looking for somebody who hit it right on the nose. So far, Luis Orizio is close. He said 10,000. Weather Nerd 735 12,000. You're all dancing around the fire here. Christopedia, her hearing is better than yours. LOL. Joe's a year younger, says Maggie P. Adam Lowe 19,000, and the correct Stink Floyd says $5,000, and the correct response to this is $10,400. That's how much a house would have cost you back in the late 1950s. So there you go. How about gas, Joe?
Gasoline?
Gasoline.
I can remember as a kid, I think it was like 30 cents a gallon. So I'll say 30 cents a gallon.
Okay, so Joe says 30 cents a gallon. And let's see. I'm still waiting for somebody to start talking about it. Here we go. So Christopher Alley says a quarter. Craig Carberg says 29 cents. Steve Lapointe, 49 cents. James H., 54 cents. Miss Spallerite in the New York City area. I guess she's asking the question. I suppose, well, this is national. This would be a national gas price. Weather Nerd, 735, 15 cents. Maggie P., 18 cents. Chuck Cardillo, 29. Anthony Spiraccio, again, coming very close with 25 cents. Timothy Veltman, 33 cents. Joe Z, 24 cents. Looking. See if anybody out there. Stink Floyd says 12 cents. No, nobody, no one else. So the answer, and I think Anthony Spiraccio came very close with it. He said 25 cents. Somebody else said a quarter. Yeah, Leon Probitsky said a quarter. 24 cents a gallon for gas in 1958. How about a postage stamp?
4 cents.
I forgot.
4 cents.
I've lost track already how much a postage stamp costs. Everybody's buying them for regular stamps.
I rarely, if ever, mail anything. So I would say 55. It's 55 cents now, I think. I'll say 5 cents.
5 cents. Joe, you were actually better off with your original.
Oh, 3 cents?
No, you said 4 cents, didn't you?
4 cents? 4 cents.
Yeah, 4 cents.
Okay.
Anthony Spiraccio again with 4 cents. Steve Lapointe, 2 cents. That's probably more for a postcard. Craig Carberg, 1 cent. Timothy Veltman, 6. Dennis Cassia, 5. Lewis Jackson, 1. Joe Z, 2 cents. Miss Spallerite, 8 cents. Miss Spallerite, I could remember when it was 8 cents when I was like 10 years old, so it had to be less than that. And it was. A postage stamp in 1958 cost you 4 cents. And finally, Joe, a gallon of milk.
20 cents.
A gallon of milk. I'm not talking about a quart of milk. I'm talking about a gallon of milk.
Oh, a gallon of milk. Okay,
yes.
A gallon?
Yes.
So if I said, what did I say, 20 cents?
Yeah.
So I'll say, so 4 quarts of a gallon would be 80 cents. I'll say 75 cents.
Joe says 75 cents. Christiapedia says 50 cents. Janet Dunn, 50 cents. This is for a gallon of milk. A gallon of milk. 65 cents from James H. Leon Pravitsky, 25 cents. Timothy Veltman, 67 cents. Dennis Cassia, 89 cents. He's the closest so far. Louis Arizio, 85. Ragtie, 62 cents. Stink Floyd, 95 cents. Pretty good. 35 cents from Adam Lowe. Latex Stream, 65. And the answer is, for a gallon of milk, $1. And I seem to remember when I was a very young boy, when I was like 6 or 7 years old, my grandmother would send me down to Angie's candy store to pick up a quart of milk, and she gave me a quarter.
Where was Angie's candy store, Joe?
Angie's?
Yeah.
God,
it's familiar. It rings a bell.
It was, God, Joe, I don't even remember anymore the streets. Was it Brinsmaid Avenue or whatever? I don't know.
So this was in the Bronx. This was not.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. This was in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I remember saying, "Go get a quart of milk," and she'd give me a quarter. And back then, a quart of milk was a quarter. So 4 times that would be 1 gallon. So even back in the early '60s, it was probably close to $1. I think today, if you buy a gallon of milk, it's what, $2.99 or $3.99 or something.
Yeah, it's more like $3.99.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's Christopedia says, "Wow, $1 was a lot. Was it a profit item back then? It's been a loss leader for decades now."
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, Joe. I just, I'm getting messages from family members here.
Oh.
I just have to finish this one last word. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, so sorry about that, folks. Mark G hitting super chat tonight. Thank you, and thank you for the happy birthday wish and for the great weekend wish. And on that note, let's get this great weekend underway. So I guess we're back Sunday morning at 11 a.m. I'm not thinking we'll have to move it to 7 o'clock. So, yeah, so 11 a.m. on Sunday.
And we'll be here.
All right. So, folks, thanks again. Thank you for the wonderful birthday wishes and for jumping on a Friday night, which is usually not a night that we do weather, but we figured what the hey. And we'll see you on Sunday at 11 a.m. Good night.
Good night, all.